Hello, the doc is in, and welcome back to another chapter of Tokyo Revengers, chapter 272, over again. In the last chapter, we basically see, like, the original timeline, hella depressing. Shinichiro kills a guy for time-leaping powers. He doesn't go back in time immediately. Following day, he decides to commit suicide. We have Sanzu seeing him jumping off the bridge, Shinichiro jumps in the water. Sanzu does not get to him in time. And then, while he's in the water, he blinks his eyes, he opens his eyes again, in the past. And so, that's where we leave off. Let's begin the chapter. So, the chapter goes, to keep it simple, the chapter goes on as you would kind of expect. He goes back in time. It's 4 years in the past, on the same day, as time-leaping powers tend to work. And he sees Mikey, he's playing with his toy airplane, and the chapter starts off with Mikey kicking Shinichiro in the face as I guess he's jumping over the couch. It's by accident, it's not like on purpose. But right, initially Shinichiro's he's kind of like, okay, obviously this isn't real. Like, I'm supposed to be dead. But then, events are happening. He's like seeing the date and everything. He's like, it's 4 years ago that day. So that means I really did go back into the past. So then he gets all emotional. And, he hasn't seen Mikey, do anything in like the longest time. He's come all this way just for Mikey's sake. So just see him, existing is lovely. So they have like a nice brotherly hug, and Shinichiro's breaking down. He's all sad. He's like, oh my god, Mikey, you're back. And obviously everybody else is kind of like, I have no clue what's wrong with him, but okay. Anyway, as Shinichiro is hugging Mikey, and Mikey's very confused, Shinichiro offers to go ride bikes with him. So he takes him on his first motorcycle ride, and they're riding off, and basically thinking like, hey, if I really did go back in time, this is my opportunity to save this whole situation and make sure everything goes well this time. So that's what I'm about to do. So, right, they're going around, he's kind of paying attention to things, he's kind of like, alright, I need to check on everything, make sure everything is fine and nothing's changed. Kind of sort of following, like, maybe, like, karma rules, like, oh, well, if Mikey didn't get hurt now, then maybe someone else got hurt. So then he's thinking about Emma, his grandpa, right? And so then he goes checks on them, and they're perfectly fine. He gets there, they're hanging out or whatever, and then he gets emotional again. Now he's offering to cook, and they're like, you've never cooked before. Then he's like, you know what, then in that case, I'm gonna go clean. He starts cleaning or whatever, right? And then he hears somebody yell out in the distance. Well, not in the distance, but he hears someone say, stop, Mikey. And he's like, oh shoot, is this, oh no, did something happen? So he runs over there, and lo and behold, we get the incident. We've seen this before, and so here we are. We see Mikey has dark impulses flowing out of him. We have Sanzu bleeding from his face on the floor. Baji off to the side, being in shock. We still don't know what happened there. I mean, it was kind of implied early. Well, actually, no, we'll get into that in a second. Right now, right, that happens, and so we get a little bit extended cut of the situation. So Shinichiro and Mikey, they're interacting, right? And so Shinichiro's kind of asking Mikey, like, well, why'd you do that? And Mikey's like, I honestly have no clue. I don't know what got into me. And Shinichiro was like, well, you gotta go apologize to Sanzu. So Mikey comes up to Sanzu and he apologizes, and as we know from Mikey's backstory, which we got, he can't cry in front of people, so I guess he's getting emotional because he feels bad about the whole situation. So then he walks out, probably to go cry, and Sanzu doesn't say anything to anyone while he's getting apologized to, right? You got the bandages over him, he's in the hospital, boom. Shinichiro starts talking to Sanzu, right? And so they're talking to each other. He's like, oh, hey, I'm not saying you gotta forgive Mikey right now or anything like that, but y'all can still be friends, whatever. He's kind of like, facilitating them, like, not having a ruined friendship over this, right? And so Sanzu puts out his hand, and he shakes Shinichiro's hand. And then flash, lightning, cut, Shinichiro's store. We are now back in the future. He's in his store, he's doing his bike stuff, He's like, okay, it's present day. He's like, did the time really change? He's like, where's Mikey at? Mikey pulls up, it's on his bike, Holman logo. He's like, hey, I messed up my bike, can you fix it? End the chapter. Alright, so, cool chapter, very nice. It kind of goes the way you would expect it to go. Two major things of this chapter are set up here. Now, one thing is we still don't get to see what exactly goes on with Mikey and Sanzu, and I guess Baji's there too. He's the only one who witnesses it, but we don't get to see what exactly happens. The implication is there's more to it than literally Senju, I almost forgot. Senju broke the airplane, blamed Sanzu. Mikey came up, beat the shit out of Sanzu, and that was that. Now, we do know in Mikey's backstory, this Dark Impulse stuff kind of goes further than that, so that could be the explanation. But we still don't actually see Mikey attack Sanzu, so we kind of don't know if there's more to it. Maybe there isn't. I feel like the line of Mikey kind of being like, I don't even know why I did it, kind of suggests that he did just do it, and there isn't really more to explain on that part, but we don't really know for sure. So on that front, I suppose that's that. And then there is a reveal that the person who is the trigger for Shinichiro is Sanzu. Now, I kind of assume this because in the last chapter, when Shinichiro jumps in the water, right? At the very point where he's when he's about to go back in the past and everything, and maybe die or whatever, we don't see his hands or his body, but we know Sanzu saw Shinichiro jump in the water and was close to where Shinichiro jumped in the water. So it wouldn't be unreasonable to predict that Sanzu grabbed Shinichiro's hand when he jumped in the water, and then that allowed him to go back in time. I mean, it really could be, it could go a number of ways, but I think that's how it is. Or at the very least, maybe in a similar fashion to the Takemichi situation, maybe it's a case where in the original timeline he just dies, but it's left somewhat ambiguous, and especially the time leaper doesn't know who grabbed their hand, and so therefore the trigger, or whoever ends up being the trigger, then fills in the timeline, so to speak. Like, kind of like with Takemichi, like he gets pushed on a train, and then what it looks like is like he's just straight up dies. But then later on, we find out when he comes back from the past, that's when we find out, oh, Naoto saved him and everything. And so it's like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense because he would have to have gone back in time first, which is true. So maybe this is a similar case where now he's gone back to the present. So now it's like, oh, I'm the one who saved you from the water that day, and then you went back in time, and then blah, 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 blah. So there we go. There's not too much more to discuss. Like I said, these time travel chapters in this whole memory setup and like original timelines and what's going on part is hard to speculate on, just because it's pretty cut and dry. Like it's already answering other questions, so it's kind of like hard to ask new questions or theorize on stuff that likely will just be explained in the next chapter. The only thing I do have a question of is this the timeline where everything goes forward? Does Shinichiro change anything else from this point? Or does he kind of just be like, oh, I'm perfectly fine with the events that have happened, and Mikey's fine in the future, that is it. And then, he has a situation with Kazutora and everything, blah, 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 blah. Now, the next question I think they'll try to answer is maybe, how does Takemichi get his powers? Like, is there a connection between Shinichiro and Takemichi or something? Whatever that may or may not be. But we'll see. But that all being said, leave a like if you like, leave a dislike if you dislike. Comment, where do you think the next chapter is going to go with this? Do you think maybe we'll get go in the direction of like, hey, Kazutora's going to come on and attack on Shinichiro soon, and so maybe he happens upon Takemichi, and he's like, oh, you know what, blah, 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 blah. Maybe Shinichiro knows he's going to die soon. Who knows? Just, what do you think is going to happen in that chapter? Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more videos like these for Tokyo Revengers, along with other series I cover every week. Might be adding a new series coming soon. ... And with that all being said, thank you for watching the video all the way through, or watching up to or just skipping to this part because you're a complete weirdo. And the doc is out. Peace.